It's time for the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast, a podcast so good it doesn't need a name. So without any further ado, here's your host, JD. Take it away, Johnny.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 54 of the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast, recorded on August 23rd, 2014. I'm your host, JD, aka Gaddick, and in today's episode, I'm back, guys! That's right, I took about a month of sabbatical. I moved, I got a new job, lots of stuff happened in real life, and, sometimes real life has to take priority over some of your gaming or other hobbies. But I'm back, and I'm here just in time to talk about the release of Galactic Strongholds. This episode will mainly focus on patch 2.9. I do want to touch on some other smaller things that happened while I was gone, but it's mostly going to be 2.9, and man, 2.9 is one hell of a patch, and I am incredibly impressed with what they've put out. I think that they've really vindicated themselves in that delay of Galactic Strongholds. If this was anything less than stellar, they would have opened themselves up to an intense amount of criticism. But so far so good, and I think they've done just fine. With all that being said, let's force leap right in.
Red 2, I've got a topic coming in hot requesting clearance to engage. Lock S-foils and attack positions, you are cleared to discuss.
So unless you've been living under a rock or don't play SWTOR, and if you don't play SWTOR, why are you listening to the SWTOR podcast? But I digress. 2.9, the mini expansion, the patch, however you want to talk about it, whatever you want to call it, Galactic Strongholds has been released, and so far I am blown away with the quality of the content that we have received in an unpaid update. Just a regular old patch. I know they like to call it an expansion. It's their digital expansion like Galactic Starfighter was, and now we have Galactic Strongholds as a free digital expansion. And both of those, I can't even fathom, or if you had told me 2 years ago that we would be getting both housing and a free flight space combat minigame or aspect to the game added to the game, I would have thought you were crazy. And this team, man, that group over there deserves some kind of an award, or at least a huge bonus, because they are pumping out awesome content, polished. I know that they had to delay the release of Galactic Strongholds because of whatever. I mean, if they had released it as it was released in beta, people probably would have been upset. There are some bugs out there still. And, it's hard to squash all the bugs. It's very difficult, and I don't blame them for not catching everything. I think they actually have done a very good job not releasing any real game-breaking bugs. I know there were some achievements not granting their associated doodads for your house, but I think they've actually changed a lot of that. They've fixed a lot of that, and now if you go into a game, you should have pretty much everything. I don't think there is anything left achievement-wise that you still should be waiting on. So yeah, kudos to BioWare on that. If you go back and listen to my old podcasts, I didn't get Strongholds. I didn't get the reason for Strongholds. I knew that some people would like that, but I thought it was a very niche thing, just like Starfighter. And Starfighter is still kind of a niche thing. Very few. I wouldn't say very few people do it, but I think it goes along with the PvP and the PvE community. I think that it is a subset of players. It doesn't have mass appeal. It doesn't. I enjoy it, but I know a lot of people don't. And I thought that Strongholds would be a very similar type of content, something that appealed to a small subset of players. But I think I'm wrong. I think I've seen a huge number of players really embrace Strongholds. Players I would never think would be the type to play house have gone in and they've decorated their house because it's a fun diversion and something you could do on your own time. You don't have to wait for queue pops, which is great. You just go into your own thing, you make your own thing, and then you can show it off to players, show how cool you are, how awesome you are, what great trophies you have in your Stronghold. And I think that Strongholds really has caught on. Will it have staying power? We'll have to see. I mean, that we'll find out in 4 or 6 months from now if players decorate their house and then they're done with it because, once you decorate it, you're probably not going to redecorate it every day. Maybe some people will, but that we still is to be seen. But on top of the Strongholds release, the fact that they released Conquests, which was something I was not expecting in any way. I did not think that they would release something like Conquest ever. It didn't even strike me to think to ask for it. And I think that is something that should really encourage people who are fans of SWTOR, is the fact that they thought of something that I don't think many people have even thought or brought up anywhere. I don't think this is something, I don't know if it's done anywhere else. I haven't played Lotro, which I know is another big, I've played a lot of other big MMOs. I played Rift, played Guild Wars, I played WoW, and I've played a couple other smaller things, Dungeons & Dragons Online. And I don't think any of those games have done the Conquest style system. Maybe some of the other Lotro or Final Fantasy or one of those games has done it. But as a concept, I think it's great. I love it. I love guild invasions. I love how the guild ships are working. They've gone above and beyond what I've come to expect from BioWare. You know, BioWare has made some bad decisions in some key areas where it comes to PvP, which we'll probably talk about later. Where it comes to PvE, they've made some poor decisions, in my opinion. But I think here they've done a hell of a job, and I can't say how impressed I really am. I can't even express that, because it's just so good. They've done a great job with the crafting system. A system that I thought and said on the show was broken and would never be fixed. That they could basically take crafting out of the game and have zero consequence. But they've somehow managed to make crafting matter again. They've made players interested not just in, okay, I can craft augments, I can craft augment kits. People are working on getting old crafting mats. People are selling old crafting mats. They're buying things for their stronghold. They're buying things for conquests. They've interweaved all of these systems that they've put together incredibly well. Everything just fits like a puzzle piece, and the fact that they've done that in such a short amount of time. Just think, it's been, I believe, less than a year since we've had Starfighter. Starfighter was released in November of last year, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong, so feel free to let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But it's been such a short period of time from when the same team, that same secret team, was working on Starfighter, and then got to go into guild housing and player housing. And the way everything fits so well together is awesome. I love the fact that they've given old mats that players maybe have stockpiled or were selling for below sell value on the GTN because it's just so worthless, like the blue slicing materials or the low-level crafting materials. The fact that they've given a use to them, a use in both your own personal house and in your guild conquests. The fact that they've allowed you to craft these little things to work into your conquest, how you can help your guild conquer a planet by crafting, how you have to craft things like the orbital strike that takes down the shield from the enemy base elite guy. The fact that they've made everything so expensive in the guild ship, I love. I know players wanted to say how expensive, and it was way too expensive before it was released, and some people still say that. But I personally love that. I personally think that the guild Starship, the guild conquest, should be something that a lot of players have to work together on. I think it should be a hardship, it should be a strife, and it should be something where your guild gets together and works together to achieve a common goal. If you make something so easy or too easy, then there is no sense of accomplishment. Maybe there's some small, tiny sense of accomplishment that you get for doing something easy. But if you do something hard, if you do something that requires a lot of work, that's why I feel like story mode and hard mode content are so important to have the multiple difficulties in PvE content, is so that players can get their small little dose of achievement and then work their way up and get the bigger dose of the euphoria of accomplishing something that's difficult and just working their way up the ladder and, you know, slowly progressing. That progression that you see yourself overcoming, that builds and that really emboldens a group or a player and really makes them feel like they've done something special. And that's, again, I'll say it, I'm back from a sabbatical, but I'm going to come back and say my favorite thing to say. All your MMO is trying to do is to get individual players in a sea of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of players. You know, SWTOR has 1 million active players every month. You're trying to get the individual in that giant pool to feel special and to feel like they done something special, something that makes them stand out. And I think that Strongholds allowing you to get special items to put into your house and show off to other players. That's great. That makes a player feel special. Guild conquests, that makes you feel like you're part of a larger whole, a larger community within the game. That makes you feel like you're in a special community, like you are part of the best group, or that you are a contributor to the guild that has conquered Voss, or the guild that has all of the guild ship things open, and they've worked together and they have all this money and they have the coolest looking guild ship around. I think this update has done wonders for the game because of that they've made each individual player, they've given each individual player the chance and the ability to do something great. And that is something that should be really commended and something that I think will do great things for the game. I think that this is a system that could be expanded in the future. They can add, infinite decorations for doing infinite different kinds of things. The conquest system is so expandable. You can put in special conquest achievements. You can put in special conquest planets. Maybe they throw in a planet there that's just there for a small amount of time, where you go in and conquest an event. How about that? What if they did events that were on like space stations or, derelict space stations, and your guild has to work together to try and conquer that space station or conquer that planet that might be going away, or to do something like that. I think that Conquest is great because it gives players a goal beyond simple, doing dailies. I think Conquest is great in that it gives players some alternative thing to do instead of the simple, I'm doing the same dailies today because I want to get some money, because I want to buy this new crystal or this new mount or yada 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 yada. Or I have to do the dailies today because, you have to do your dailies in PvP to get the rank comms, to get the comms you need so I can do my ranked dailies, and then, or I need to log in today because it's reset day, so I gotta get my ops. It helps take away that monotony by giving you an alternate progression system that makes those things more worthwhile. You're not just logging in because I need to get some more credits. You're logging in because I'm helping my guild, the people that I have aligned myself with, and the people who are also working towards the same goal as me. I'm helping them. We're all going to help each other. It gives players a reason to log in and do things together as a guild, which is great. Guilds are the lifeblood of MMOs. Single players will never stay and play a game forever. There will be some time and some place where single players decide, alright, I've seen all there is to see. I've played this game a million times. Games like Skyrim are 1 in a million where players play hundreds and hundreds of hours. Most of the time, if a single person's playing a game, alright, I've seen everything, I've beaten the campaign, I'm out. MMOs are special because they allow you to have a community and play the game in a community, a group of players. And that's why guilds are so important and should be given tools and reasons to work together, to play together. If you're in a guild where you log in and no one is ever talking and no one ever does anything, well, maybe this will get your guild to work together and do something. Maybe this will be the thing that spurs your guild on, or maybe it's time to find a new guild who is maybe doing that thing. And in the end, that should get more players logging in, being more happy to log in, wanting to log in. I've been out of the game for like 3 weeks now, and for a couple weeks there, I was like, alright, that's fine. But as soon as I saw 2.9 was released and how awesome and how big in scale it was, and as soon as I logged in for the first time after a couple weeks off, and I got into my stronghold and I saw my guild was finally doing stuff again, my guild was active, we're conquering Voss, we're number 1 on the leaderboards in Voss right now, it's just so exciting to see the community alive and vibrant again. And when the community is alive, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When there's a lot of players playing, a lot of players having fun, more players want to come in and have fun and join into the fun. And when there's more players that are working towards something, then everyone's having more fun, and then more players want to come in. And I really think this update will do wonders for the game, especially if they can follow it up with new story content. I'm going to talk a little bit about the non-Flashpoint in the second segment, because I'm mind blown when I did that Flashpoint. This update is like done from people that came from Mars, that went down to BioWare and were like, this is how you make your awesome MMO. You're doing this. Now you're going to do an expansion. I can't wait to see the expansion after having seen this. I don't know. I am psyched, and I am happy to be back in game. So with that, I'm going to try and work on some of the echo that I know I've been getting in here. I can kind of hear myself, even with my headphones on, I hear myself, my voice bouncing off the walls. I think I need to just put up some sheets or something. Maybe some more stuff on the walls will help. I hope so. But I'm going to take a break here. After the break, I'm going to talk about other aspects of 2.9 and other things that have been going on in the community while I was gone, because while I may not have been playing the game, I was definitely keeping up on the game. You are listening to the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast, the #1 SWTOR podcast without a name. I'm your host, JD, aka Gaddock Teague, and like I said, I took a 3-week break, and coming back to the game now, so much has changed, so much news has gone on, and I feel bad because I missed it all. Actually, it's kind of funny, I was complaining about how I had nothing to talk about, there was so little to talk about before when I was recording my podcasts, and all of a sudden I leave, and they release all this news, a whole bunch of stuff's going on. They released a 2.9 update to the PTS. They released the 2.10 update to the PTS now. I feel like they're spiting me because I'm sometimes critical of their game. Sometimes? No, that's not it. I'm just kidding. But let's talk about some other things that are going on in the game. The Manon Flashpoint was also released in this update in the mini expansion. And you know I've been critical of the tactical Flashpoint design so far. I think KDY is a great Flashpoint, but the other ones so far, the Assault on Tython, the Assault on Korriban, I think are terrible flashpoints. So I went into Manon with absolutely zero expectations. I was waiting to come on here and tell you, it's more of the same. This is a terrible flashpoint. There's nothing interesting going on. I don't know why anyone would want to do this more than once, just to get the story out of the way. And you know, the Assault on Korriban and Tython storylines actually weren't that great either, in my opinion. You know, it's cool that you're invading the other person's home planet, but it just had so much like Deus Ex Machina. It sucked that both flashpoints were exactly the same on both sides, just with some palette swaps. It was not done well in my opinion. So I have a lot of problems with that flashpoint. Manon is incredible. It's the exact opposite. The storyline is incredibly engaging. It has some great characters. The Wookiee character that we've been seeing with the droid around his neck is my favorite character in the game already, and you see him for like 10 minutes. He's awesome. The bosses are done incredibly well, and spoiler warning, I'm going to go over some of the bosses here and what I like so much about them. First boss is the guy and has 2 droids that have shields that swap. This is a pretty boring boss, mundane boss, just don't hit the guy with a shield. So when I first did this boss, I was like, alright, this is okay, but it's kind of more of the same. I'm not expecting much more out of this flashpoint. And then all of a sudden you get to Ortuno, who is the Selkath Jedi guy who spawns pools in the ground that stay there, and you have to kite him around because the pools hurt you, and then all of a sudden he does a cast ability that makes the pools go enormous and electrify and can very easily kill you. He does some hard-hitting damage. He's not a joke. This guy could have easily been ported to a raid with these mechanics, maybe a couple more thrown in there. I think he is a perfectly done boss for flashpoints, for tactical flashpoints in particular. I think the mechanics are, simple to understand so players can wrap their minds around it, but not so simple to implement. You have to be careful not to put the pools around the healing pods that you need to use. You have to be careful not to put them all over the room, so when he does the giant explodey thing that causes all the pools to grow in size and electrify, that they're not covering the entire room. So there's definitely a lot of player accountability here. If a player is standing not paying attention where they're standing and just stands in the pools, they'll probably die. Players have to be aware. Players have to move. This is a great fight, and I was incredibly impressed with this one. And then the final boss is the cell cat that has been augmented, or whatever experiments they've been doing on him. And he fights you while you're trying to escape the sinking ship. I love the setup for this one. I love how they implemented it, where you have a 5-minute timer, and if you don't do it in 5 minutes, well, then you're screwed, because the whole thing is going down to the ground. It's going to explode, and you're all going to drown and die. I love the stakes to that. I think the boss is done very well, where you have to drag him over to the fire, and then he punches you and drops your aggro, so someone else has to do it. It forces all players to be accountable. It causes you to have to do the risk-reward of, I can hold him in the fire for 5 stacks, but maybe I have to be in the fire for a little bit, so I'm going to be taking a lot of damage. And how much do we want to do this? It's a push-pull kind of thing. I think that's great. It also has ads, so players have to deal with those in a timely manner. I just think this fight is very well designed. Maybe not as good as Ortuno, because Ortuno is maybe the masterclass of tactical Flashpoint bosses. He might be above the droid boss from KDY in my eyes now. But this guy's really cool, and I think the setting really adds to the coolness of the boss. I think overall, Manon is a beautiful area. I can't believe they'd put so much work into an area that's just a Flashpoint hub. It's not even a hub, it's just one Flashpoint. And I assume that they'll put the next Flashpoint, like dropship or whatever, on Manon. And I could easily see them doing something else with Manon. There's just too much area there, too much that has been rendered and with great detail. Too much of that is in there for them to just not use this anymore. I think we're going to see something done to Manon in the future. Maybe in the expansion, maybe in the next patch with the new Flashpoint that comes out. Maybe something else will be added to Manon. But I could easily see this being a daily area or an area that gets fully fleshed out into a full-fledged planet for an expansion. And to top it all off, the Flashpoint is the perfect length. The Korben and Tython Flashpoints aren't that long, but they feel like they drag on. You're doing a bunch of useless mini quests, you're doing a whole bunch of killing of trash mobs that aren't interesting, it takes too long to get through the Flashpoint. But the Manon Flashpoint it feels like, and you're done. It's great. And one of the best things you can say about something is it leaves you wanting more. You never want to overstay your welcome, and this Flashpoint definitely doesn't do that. I also love the story. The story hasn't been great in my eyes in a while. I didn't love Makeb on either side. It was okay, it was fine, it got you through the 5 levels, but I do like the story of the Dread Masters, but it's too high fantasy for me. It's too much like WoW, in my opinion. I asked them at the last Cantina when we would see, or if they would continue to push the more fantasy aspects of the Rogue Mages Council, which is basically what the Dread Council is. You see that story in every fantasy thing. But this story is right up my alley. I love what they've done with these characters so far. I thought the Assault on Tython and Korben stories were meh. You got a little bit at the beginning with the lead-in quest line, and then you're just dropped in, and you do your stuff, and then at the end you get a little cutscene, and that's it. And you don't really know what's going on because it's the first act. But this story is just perfect, spot on. You get it slowly drip fed to you throughout the Flashpoint. You get conversations, and they're interesting. There's some funny conversations in there. I love that they've gone back to adding in conversations of Flashpoints. I think they're one of the strong suits of SWTOR. I know a lot of people want to just spacebar through them, but I think they really add to the game, and I love that they're there in this Flashpoint. I love that not all the story is told to you in cutscenes. Some of it is told over holocom while you're going through the Flashpoint, which is great. And I think the reveals at the end really they hit home when you get to them. So I'm excited for that, and I can't wait to see where they go with the story. I think this story, whereas Assault on Tython and Assault on Korben, they kind of feel weak. This story feels like it could have been a part 1 to an episode of some kind of Star Wars: The Old Republic TV show. It really engages you, it leaves you wanting more, and it's super exciting to see that. I'm a big fan of episodic gaming or serialized gaming, where each part of a game, like the Telltale games, tells its own mini story while being wrapped up in a larger collective, a larger story. And I think this Flashpoint really feels like that, and I can't wait till we see, spoiler alert, Rakata Prime in the next Flashpoint. Also released while I was gone was the whole Ranked Season 2 debacle. Well, this was an interesting one. As I'm sure you've heard, BioWare released the Season 2 rewards very late, only with a couple weeks left in the season of Season 2. They said several times that they would release it earlier, but that just never happened for some reason. And that's one of my biggest gripes I have with BioWare on this one. I don't have a big problem with the other part of this, which we'll discuss after, but I have a big problem with their messaging on this. They didn't really address complaints until way after the fact. They released their Season 2 reward announcement. They kept delaying it. It took forever. One of the biggest sentiments I saw after Season 1 was that PvPers think and feel that they need the rewards announced sooner, and that would incentivize them to play more. I think BioWare is doing a big disservice to their PvP community by not releasing them sooner, and by kind of leading them on like the way they did. I think that they should have came out and said why it was taking so long, because they didn't really do that. They kind of just swept it under the rug and acted like nothing really happened there. And BioWare even said at the end of last season that they recognized that they waited too long to announce the season rewards. And while it was great to get the boost from players playing after seeing the rewards, and I think they shouldn't come right out of the gate at the start of the season and say them, because that boost is real and important. But I think that they even admitted that they waited too long and that they'd be doing it sooner, and they didn't do that. So that's my big gripe against BioWare here. They should definitely work on Season 3 and listen to the fans. I know that the patch 2.10 class changes actually have some great changes that are community focused, community forward, and they've been and the devs have been doing a great job in those forums. So hopefully they'll continue to do that and do that for Season 3 of Ranked PvP. Now, one thing I don't fault BioWare at all, that the community was very upset with, was the fact that the top tier reward for Season 2 was the helm of Baron Deathmark, Baron Deathmark's helm. And that's it. It was not a armor set, it wasn't a mount, it wasn't a walker mount painted purple and gold like I would have bet money it was going to be. It was just a headpiece. And personally, I think that's just fine. I think that after Season 1, there was a huge outcry of players saying, well, if you get the top tier of Season 1, or you get the top tier of a ranked season, you should get something special, something unique, something that you can't get anywhere else in the game. So, while the Rancor from Season 1 I still think is one of the coolest mounts in the game, it's way cooler than the Cartel Market Rancor or the Casino Event Rancor, players still complained about that. They said that it wasn't enough and they wanted something different, special, that stands out. Obviously, they could have done a special looking mount. Obviously, they could have done a special looking armor set. But at this point, BioWare isn't going to release something special and unique that players have no chance of getting in the future. They want their players to be able to get these special, cool looking things. And while you can question that philosophy, and I definitely do, I think that they should be able to give something that looks special to players. And they did this season, and I think it looks cool, and I think they've done it in a fair way. It's something that will make players stand out. If you see a player wearing that helmet, you can't get that helmet anywhere else in the game, so you know what they had to accomplish to get it. I kind of wish it had like a tag. It was Baron Deathmark's helm, Season 2 Tier 1 reward or something in parentheses, so players knew if you got inspected. But it's something that you can't get anywhere else in the game, and that's cool. Obviously, it wasn't good enough for some people. Obviously, some players still said that they wanted a mount or would have preferred something different. But I don't think you can fault BioWare for trying something different, trying something that players and some players claimed they wanted. Maybe they'll go back to a mount next time because of the outcry. Maybe they'll try something completely different that isn't a mount or isn't something gear related. They'll do something cool and something out of the box in the next season. But you can't fault them for trying. You can't fault them for doing something different when the outcry was so negative last time. You can't say, oh, why didn't you just give us this thing that you gave us last time? Because a lot of people complained about that, a lot of people complained about this. So hopefully they find something that all players can enjoy, or at least most players can enjoy, most players are happy with. If it is going back to the mounts, I'm fine with that. But you can't fault BioWare because they tried to appease the players that didn't like last season. And with that, it's time for the Wall of Crazy.
What? That's impossible, even for a computer. It's not impossible. I used to bullseye womper rats in my T16 back home. They're not much bigger than 2 meters.
In this week's Wall of Crazy topic, I asked you a very simple question. What is the best part of patch 2.9? Got a few different answers, but most of them were variations on a theme. Where it says, at Where It, Strongholds, because we're not big enough to compete in conquests, and I'll run Manon tomorrow, and I believe where it has run Manon, and came to similar conclusions as me. You really enjoyed that one. David at RI_Kiri says he's enjoying the conquest, but I wish there was better implementation of the PTS so that smaller guilds could compete. Jason Connell at JConnell says he likes the way that smaller guilds have been joining forces with other smaller guilds to create larger ones so that they can compete, and I love that, and I agree with him there. Lori M responds to him though, I actually really don't like that. People shouldn't feel like they have to be in large guilds to participate. And I think this may be a topic for discussion. Maybe I should do a whole segment on it next week, because I actually don't have a problem with the guilds coming together. I actually think it's very good for the game when smaller guilds join forces to make larger guilds. I think that there's nothing to be afraid of when you're joining guilds together. I know that some people dislike the fact that you lose some control of your guild when you go into a larger guild. Maybe you end up, having problems with people in the guild, but I actually think that cooler heads usually prevail, and there are a lot of great guilds out there, and a lot of great murders that could take place, and could create great gaming communities just by joining these guilds together. And the fear of leaving your small guild for a big corporate guild, basically, I think it's unfounded, and that players, for the most part, will find that they will enjoy a big guild as well as small guild. Bad Feeling Podcast at Bad Feeling Podcast says, everyone being just as lost and overwhelmed as me for once. And that I can relate to. That's pretty funny right there. And then Ben Turfray at Turfray Studios says, there must be something because it made me resubscribe, and that is a great thing for the game. And that about does it for this week's show. As always, if you'd like to contact me, you can send your questions, comments, and concerns to gaddickteague@gaddickgaming.com, or you can tweet them to @gteague on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes to get your weekly podcast. Updates, and if you're new to the game or thinking of resubscribing, I provided my refer a friend link in the show notes, so if you like a little added incentive, feel free to use it. You can also check out my website, gaddickgaming.com, where I post the podcast blogs and anything else I feel like putting up there. Hopefully it'll be more active now that I'm back and moved in and all that good stuff. Also, if you'd like to hear me talk about something in the show, email me gaddickteague@gaddickgaming.com like I just said, and I can cover your topic. I'm sure that there's a lot of burning questions you have as to what I feel about the things I missed in the past couple weeks or about things coming up in the future. So get them in, and if I read your email on the show, I will give you a pet code. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Unnamed SWTOR Podcast. This is JD, signing off.